What is up, y'all? Jacob Klucas with Work the Crowd. And with the NBA play-in officially over, we're going to get into the NBA playoffs, the matchups, and a little bit of predictions from yours truly. So let's not beat around the bush. Let's get right into it here and start going over some of these playoff matchups and predictions. Here we go. So let's dive right into first. We'll start off in the Western Conference. We have the number one team in the West, the Oklahoma City Thunder, taking on the Memphis Grizzlies, who just beat the Dallas Mavericks in the play-in to secure their spot. So I don't think this matchup, there's not really much to this matchup. I think the Oklahoma City Thunder sweep Memphis and get this over in 4 games. I don't expect, like I said, I don't expect this to be any kind of, maybe a little bit of entertaining. I'm sure Ja will probably do something that has people talking in the media. But I mean, we're talking well-rounded Oklahoma City Thunder team. And listen, I'm not saying because they get swept, I'm not saying Memphis is just going to get blown out. They're not. They're going to be some close games. But I think overall, in the grand scheme of things, I think Oklahoma City is just too much for this Memphis Grizzlies team to handle. So 4-0, I got Oklahoma City moving on. The next round, this could be one of the most interesting matchups in the playoffs. The number 4 seed, Denver Nuggets, taking on the 5-seeded LA Clippers. Now, nobody really expected the Clippers to be here. One, we never knew the status of Kawhi Leonard's health. We didn't know after kind of seeing James Harden the last couple of years, really never knew what kind of James Harden you're going to get out of him anymore on a night-to-night basis. But this Clippers team has been very fun to watch, and call it a hot take, been more fun to watch than the Paul George, Kawhi Leonard Clipper teams. All right. I mean, you have the 2 stars with James Harden and Kawhi. You add in the fact that Norman Powell, while Kawhi was out, came out and was averaging like 24 a night and is still giving you buckets even with Kawhi back in the rotation. Zubac this year has been amazing down low as a defensive presence, as a big man, as a rebounder, kind of a do-it-all guy. He has been amazing. And I'm wondering where are the Nuggets at mentally? Where are the Nuggets at mentally with the locker room divided on the firing of their coach? Well, let's start there. They fired their coach before the playoffs. Where's the team at after that? The locker room was divided on firing the coach. Where is this team mentally going into this series? And I think that's a problem. And with Kawhi being healthy, this Nuggets team does not have anybody on the perimeter that can stop Harden and Kawhi on the outside. And with that being said, I know Jokic, listen, may or may not win the MVP. I have the Clippers winning this series in 7 games. I do think it is a competitive 7, which is why I think it's very entertaining. But I think at the end of the day, Kawhi Leonard shows up. We get James Harden shows up, and I don't know where the Nuggets' heads are in, certain late game situations. Does somebody like Jokic or Murray trust their new coach? What happens? But I've got the Clippers moving on to face the Thunder in the next round, which leads us to the 3-6 matchup in the West, which is Luka, LeBron, and the Lakers versus Anthony Edwards and the Timberwolves. I know it's a running joke, Lakers in 5, but I do think the Lakers win this series in 5 games. I think Ant is going to give them, a good enough game to win them a game, essentially almost by himself. But this Timberwolves team does not give you a whole lot offensively. And I know what Julius Randle is in the playoffs, so I can't rely on Julius Randle in the playoffs to help out Ant. I mean, this team kind of struggled at times offensively last year, and they went to the conference finals. But I trust Karl Towns a little bit more than Julius Randle. But, yeah, that man in the picture, Rudy Gobert's barbecue chicken when it comes to Luka and LeBron and this pick and rolls that they're going to run them through. I expect J.J. Redick to come up with defensive schemes to slow down Anthony Edwards. Like I said, Lakers win this series in 5 games. Excuse me. Then this one, the battle of the OGs and the up-and-comers, the newcomers. This Rockets team is very young. They're very exciting, very fast, very athletic, very good. The Warriors, Steph Curry, Jimmy Butler, Draymond Green, experience. And I think that's what carries the Warriors in this series. I think the Rockets are a scary team to look out for in the with the next 1, 2, 3, 4 years. I think they add a superstar in the offseason, and that's going to what catapults them next year. But right now, when you're talking about having to face Steph Curry and Jimmy Butler in the playoffs, we know what Jimmy becomes in the playoffs. I think this Rockets team is still another year or two away from being what they can be. And with that being said, I think the Warriors win this series in about 6 games. The Rockets obviously make it competitive, but I think the Warriors win this series in 6. Moving on to the East, sticking all first round, Cavs Heat. The Heat won their play-in game to secure their spot against the Cleveland Cavaliers. And with that being said, I think the Cavs win this series in 5 games. I think Miami's able to get one back in Miami, maybe. And then outside of that, the Cavs are just a whole lot to handle for Miami right now, the way that they're constructed and built. So I have the Cavs in 5 winning this series. Pacers Bucks. Unfortunately, the man in the middle, number 0 from Milwaukee, is not going to be playing this series. And I think that's the biggest factor in this series. I know Giannis the last month has been phenomenal. Don't get me wrong, but the Pacers team all around, I think, is what gets to Milwaukee. I do think this series goes 5 or 6 games, more than likely 6, because of who Giannis is. But I think the Pacers are just going to be too much for Milwaukee with not a whole lot of offensive firepower outside of Giannis and then what Kuzma can give you. So I have the Pacers moving on in 6 games. Listen, my old heads, if you listen to me, this is the basketball game to watch in 2025 for you old heads. This is going to be a physical series between the Knicks and the Pistons in the 3-6 matchup. Okay. A physical series. You have the Pistons who will legitimately look to go out there and fight you as soon as they step on the court. And the Knicks who are just already, dive on the floor, they hard nosed defense. This is going to be a physical series. I honestly wouldn't shock me if a whole lot of these games don't hit, 100. And if they do, they barely go over 100. But this is going to be a physical series. But I think at the end of the day, the Pistons are just a couple years away from where they want to be as well. I think the Knicks win this series in 7, though. I do think because of how physical this series is, we could possibly see a significant injury to one of these teams, potentially, that slows this series down a little bit. Cade Cunningham has become a superstar this season, and I think he kind of has a little bit of a Luka effect where he can kind of get his own. I think the Knicks at the end of the day are able to get it done in 7 against the Pistons. Celtics Magic, kind of like Thunder Grizzlies. Let's really not overthink this. Celtics win this series. They sweep. Magic, before all their injuries, is the main one being Paulo at the beginning of the year, and then they lost Franz. Now they don't have Jalen Suggs. The Magic are a sleeping giant in the East. I think they are an elite, lead guard away from being really good in the Eastern Conference. Fortunately, they just don't have that. And I think, again, Boston's just too good in the East. Boston moves on in this series and sweeps Orlando. Excuse me. Thunder Clippers, Western Conference, second round. Interesting series. But OKC does win this series. But where do the Clippers make it tough? The thing with OKC, and I'll get to this a little bit later as well, is they have really good defenders. The problem is their defenders are also very small. Even Chet Holmgren, obviously not anything physically to, not a physical presence. Even Jalen Williams, good defender, not really as strong as most wings in the league. Dort, as great as of a defender as he is kind of small at the small forward/2 guard spot. But OKC, because they have a whole lot of firepower and because of what they can throw at the Clippers, I think wins this series. And James Harden, I think we kind of get back and dial back to that, what we know as a playoff James Harden, where he kind of, takes a back seat a little bit. And I think this is a series that it happens. Kawhi probably has a great series, but at the end of the day, OKC is too much to handle. Lakers Warriors. Listen, this is kind of a series everybody wants to see always. Anytime you can get a LeBron versus Steph Curry in a potential 7-game series, it's fun to watch. But at the end of the day, I think the Lakers win this series in 6 games, probably 5 or 6, more than likely 6. And the X factor is Austin Reeves. Golden State will have, I won't say answers for Luka and LeBron. Nobody will ever have answers for Luka and LeBron, but a whole lot of teams don't have that third defender that if Luka and LeBron for whatever reason can't get something going, now you can just give the ball to Reeves and go. And that's kind of the deciding factor with that. So I got the Lakers moving on in 6 games to the Western Conference Finals. Over in the East, Cavs Pacers. This will be a very interesting series. At the end of the day, I do think the Cavs move on in 5 or 6 games, more than likely 6. We'll go 6 games. I do think the Pacers are able to push Cleveland a little bit. I think Cleveland's the more physical team, but Indiana likes to get out and run a lot as well. So, but at the end of the day, I think Cavs win the series in 6 games. Donovan Mitchell has a great series. Pacers get bounced in the second round. And then Celtics Knicks. I think this series ends in probably 5 or 6 games. I think New York just comes in just beaten up from the Detroit series. Now having to face a well rested after just sweeping the Magic Celtics team. Jason Tatum's got a lot to prove this postseason. They're going into this postseason healthy, so Porzingis is going to be healthy going into this series more than likely. Hopefully, you would, barring nothing happens in that Orlando series. But yeah, 5 or 6 games. New York struggled against the good teams as well this year, so I can't trust them in this series. Boston moves on in 5 against the Knicks. Western Conference Finals, Thunder, Lakers. Now, this is what I alluded to earlier with the Clippers. These wing defenders in OKC are small. And when I'm talking about small, in comparison to Luka and LeBron, where they're 2 top defenders, on the perimeter, Jalen Williams and Lou Dort, those are going to have to be your 2 primary guys on LeBron or Luka, and both of them are too small for either one of them. Okay. I understand OKC has a size advantage with Chet Holmgren and Isaiah Hartenstein over the Lakers, but the other factor in this is I don't know what it is. When Luka sees the Oklahoma City Thunder, it's like when he sees Rudy Gobert, his eyes just light up. And I don't know if it's because he sees it as more of a challenge with Lou Dort and Jalen Williams and the bodies that they can throw at him. So it just motivates him a little bit more. But I think this series does go obviously 7 games. This is going to be a very good series. But listen, at the end of the day, Luka and LeBron, when that's your 1-2 punch on a team, good luck. I also think the Thunder are still just one more year away from being that true dynasty that they can be. Over in the East, Cavs, Celtics, Eastern Conference Finals. We saw this a lot of times when LeBron was in Cleveland, but LeBron's not in Cleveland anymore. But I do think this series goes 6 or 7 games. I do think the Boston Celtics win this series, move on to the NBA Finals for the second straight year. Cavs just fall just short against the Celtics. And it just, listen, being a Cavs fan, obviously, I don't want this to happen. But when our 2 lead guards are as small as they are, it's a problem. It is. And I've said it from the jump. I've always been on it's a problem when both of our lead guards are 6'3" or below. You got to have some size at the guard position a little bit, especially in today's NBA. And that's what hurts them. Like I said, Celtics move on in 6 or 7 games, which leads to our NBA Finals. And it's when a league is down and down viewership and down, eyes watching, all that. How do you fix that? Let's have a Lakers Celtics NBA Finals. What people would probably consider the only rivalry in the NBA. Boston won a title last year that put them up 1 on the Lakers. And, obviously Laker fans don't like that and they want their get back. And Jason Tatum's got a lot to prove. He didn't like how he won a championship last year, didn't get conference finals MVP, didn't get finals MVP, didn't get to play in the Olympics hardly. Tatum's got a lot to prove for this series. Unfortunately for him, so does Luka Doncic, trying to essentially throw up a middle finger to the Dallas Mavericks. LeBron's trying to win more rings to solidify his legacy even more, especially at his late age. And call it bias, call it whatever you want. I think the Lakers win this series in 7 games. And listen, I'm not a big conspiracy guy. I do believe in conspiracies in sports, but I'm not a big conspiracy guy. But this is what the NBA is going to want. They want a Lakers Celtics NBA Finals for the viewership. They're going to want this to go 7 games. And I think it goes 7 games. And in a game 7, and I've got Luka and LeBron on my team. The Martians coming down to Earth. I've got 1 game for my life. Yeah, I'm picking the team that has Luka and LeBron on it. So, with that being said, I have the Lakers winning the 2025 NBA championship. Luka gets his first ring. LeBron gets ring number 5. Reeves gets his first ring. Bunch of guys on the Lakers get their first ring. And they get to move on to a complete offseason of next year, full season of building around Luka and potentially, hopefully, still LeBron. So that is all. That's all I got today. That's my NBA playoff predictions. Drop below in the comment section. Who do you have winning the finals? Who do you have in your conference finals? And yeah, with that being said, peace out.